Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I'd like to talk briefly about my ideas for my next project. I'm going to start programming and talking about a new game, and the particular aim that I have for this game is to try and have a bit more strategy. Role-playing games, both tabletop and computer, are good at certain things. They tend to be good at certain things. They tend to be good at creating a sense of story or narrative. They tend to be good at creating a sort of sense of immersion, a sense that you are your fictional representation in the game, more so than you certainly feel that playing Dungeons and Dragons more than you feel that playing, chess or checkers or something like that. But they tend to not be so good at strategy. And so when we talk about trying to have strategy in games like this, if we want to look at existing models, we tend to look at not so much role-playing games, but board games. There is a subset of board games that both have sort of strategy, can be played as pure board games, can be enjoyed purely as a sort of abstract exercise in seeing whether you win or lose, but also have role-playing game-like elements. Typically that a player will have a single piece. That single piece is understood to be an individual person, and that's sort of understood to be them in the game. In some sense, this is you. You are this particular person. And they often incorporate mechanics from role-playing games as well. They also tend to have a lot of mechanics in common, and I'd like to briefly talk about that. Starting with a game called Pandemic. This is what you're looking at here is the board of the board game Pandemic. It's not the official board. This is one that a fan made that's sort of slightly clearer, but the official board looks basically the same. The theme of Pandemic is that there has been an outbreak of disease and that the players cooperate in trying to stop the spread of the disease and also trying to find a cure for the disease with a sort of a time limit. The outbreaks of disease get worse and worse over time as the game goes on, and past a certain point, you have to find a cure, or have to, in fact, to find cures for all four of the diseases, or you lose the game. And that model, you find that model, I don't know if Pandemic originated that model necessarily, but it's a sort of very famous example of that model, where you have some sort of bad thing that is spreading. It starts small. It often starts sort of, breaks out in less places, or it breaks out with less severity, depending on the game, and it sort of spreads randomly. It expands. If you don't stop it, it will get out of control and you lose the game. And the characters, the players, have to contain that threat, often balancing the need to contain that threat with some other objective as well. In this particular case, in the case of Pandemic, you are looking for a cure, and you're also running around the board treating existing cases of the disease, and you sort of use the same resources to do both. You use the cards that you have to do both, and so that creates a sort of potentially interesting trade-off. And this is a model of a game. This is a model of how to sort of make a game that you find quite a lot, and it is the model that the game that I'm going to make uses. I've actually done an online version of this game that I'm going to do called Blaze before, although it's no longer on the internet. It was on an old website that I had. The game that I'm going to make or going to adapt, was a sort of amateur game. It was just made by someone on a forum, but I quite liked it. I came across it and I was sort of quite taken with it. And I asked if I could adapt it, and they said yes. As the name might imply, Blaze is about fighting a fire. You are meant to be a sort of fire chief, and you're sending firefighters to try and contain the spread of this fire. Although I rethemed it to be that you are vampire hunters trying to stop vampires from taking over a city. Often these games, the threat is surprisingly easy to retheme. And this is actually true of Pandemic. There have been other versions of Pandemic which use different rules and a different board, but basically the same system for a lot of different themes. There's one that's ancient Rome and you're trying to stop barbarian invasions. There's one that is Lovecraft, so it's like the great old ones are awaking and there's more and more cultists popping up in Innsmouth and Arkham and the other locations in H.P. Lovecraft's fiction. And in fact, I might retheme Blaze. I was thinking of retheming it to some sort of fantasy theme or science fiction theme, that there's a sort of evil empire that is expanding and your job is to try and inspire people to resist this. Pandemic, I don't think Pandemic quite works as a model for what I'm trying to do, though, because it does have a sense of story. You know, you do have a sense that you are sort of running around the world treating this disease and trying to find a cure, but it doesn't quite have the role-playing elements, the character elements that I want. It is a little bit abstract. You do have a character with the name of a not the name of a person, but a job role, and each character does have a particular power. But the characters are a little bit simple for what I want. For a sort of better model of what I'm looking at, I would talk about the board game Eldritch Horror. This is a H.P. Lovecraft themed game. Very similar. You're trying to stop the outbreak of, the great old ones gaining influence in the world. As you can see, it's a very similar board. It's the similar sort of map projection. It's the map of the world. Different spaces that are connected. And you move around the board trying to balance the necessity of stopping these monsters from appearing in the world, which I believe get more severe as time goes on. I'm not as familiar with this game. I'm quite familiar with Pandemic. I played it a lot, but I haven't played Eldritch Horror. You have to balance that with, in this case, improving your character. You have to gain sort of better stats to deal with the threat. But if you spend too much time doing that, you won't sort of stop the main threat. So again, you've got that that sort of more than one thing that you have to put your attention into. This is a character from Eldritch Horror, Marie Lambeau. So as you can see, you've got a picture, you've got an individual name, you've got an occupation. That none of that is sort of mechanically anything. That's just sort of flavour. She has a special move that she can do, and you have sort of role-playing game-like stats. She has, I think that's called stamina. It's like physical health. It's like hit points, basically. She has 5 of those, and then you have, as you often do in Lovecraft-themed games, you have sort of mental hit points. As you see these impossible, horrible things, they drive you more and more insane, and so you have some sort of mental hit points that you have to keep track of in much the same way that you keep track of physical hit points. This is something that the first tabletop role-playing game of H.P. Lovecraft did, the role-playing game Call of Cthulhu, and most Lovecraft-themed games have stuck to that ever since. So you have the physical hit points, you have your mental hit points, and then you have these sort of skills or stats: law, influence, observation, strength, and will. And one of the main mechanics of the game is you make a test. You might be told to make a test against law or a test against strength or something like that. And if you succeed, you will gain some resource in the game. And if you fail, you will, suffer some penalty. Usually, perhaps you might lose stamina or sanity. So this is sort of more what I'm going for, something where you have a character that is you, as it were, that it's your avatar in the game. There might be other characters, but there should definitely be a single you character, a single player character. And you are moving around a board trying to stop a growing threat, essentially. And the game that I'm going to adapt, which I call, as I've said, is called Blaze, or the vampire version that I did was called Hunters, doesn't meet all of those requirements. So what I'm going to do, it is a simple, more abstract sort of game, more like Pandemic. In fact, probably even more abstract than Pandemic. But what I'm going to do is just code the game as is, and then look at how we can usefully add RPG-like elements. How can we get from a sort of more abstract game to a game where we have proper characters and we feel like we're not just moving pieces around a board, but playing a character, and hopefully have a game where we can have that feeling, but it's still a good game. There's still strategy. There's still interesting things to think about, even if we look at it as an abstract thing, even if we remove the story element from the game. Can that be done? Well, I believe it can to some extent. And of course, it'll be interesting to find out. So that's what I'm planning to do. I hope that you will join me in future videos. I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you. And I hope you will tune in next time.